Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2520 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. In today's Wisdom Nugget, we'll continue our journey through Psalm 37, focusing on verses 8 through 15 from the New Living Translation. This section builds on David's earlier reflection about trusting in God and avoiding envy of the wicked, providing practical guidance for living in peace and trusting in God's justice. Let's begin by reading Psalm 37, verses 8 through 15 together. Stop being angry. Turn from your rage. Don't lose your temper. It only leads to harm. For the wicked will be destroyed, but those who trust in the Lord will possess the land. Soon the wicked will disappear. Though you look for them, they will be gone. The lowly will possess the land and will live in peace and prosperity. The wicked plot against the godly. They snarl at them in defiance. But the Lord just laughs, for he sees their day of judgment coming. The wicked draw their swords and string their bows, to kill the poor and the oppressed, to slaughter those who do right. But their swords will stab their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. David begins this section in verse 8 with a strong admonition. Stop being angry. Turn from your rage. Don't lose your temper. It only leads to harm. Here David addresses the natural human response to injustice, which is anger. When we see the wicked thriving and experience wrongdoing, it's easy to let our frustration and rage take over. However, David warns us about letting anger control us because it leads to harm. Anger, when unchecked, can cause us to act impulsively or make decisions that go against God's will. It can disrupt our peace, damage our relationships, and even hinder our ability to trust God's justice. Instead, David encourages us to let go of our anger and trust that God will handle this situation. This verse reminds us to guard our hearts and minds when we encounter situations that provoke us. Anger itself isn't sinful, it's a natural emotion, but how we respond to it does matter. By turning to God in prayer and seeking His perspective, we can release our anger and avoid the harm that it might otherwise cause. In verses 9 and 10, David contrasts the fate of the wicked with the hope of those who trust in the Lord. For the wicked will be destroyed, but those who trust in the Lord will possess the land. Soon the wicked will disappear. Though you look for them, they will be gone. These verses emphasize the temporary nature of the wicked's success. While it may seem that they are thriving now, their time is limited. God's justice ensures that evil will not endure. On the other hand, those who trust in the Lord are promised to lasting inheritance. They will possess the land. This imagery speaks of both physical blessings as it relates to Israel's covenant and spiritual blessing as it relates to God's eternal promises to His people. David reassures us that God's justice is certain, even if it doesn't come in a timeline that we might expect. When we feel overwhelmed by the presence of evil, we can take comfort in knowing that God sees the bigger picture. The wicked may seem powerful for a moment, but their influence will fade, while the faithfulness of God's people will endure. Verse 11 offers a beautiful promise. The lowly will possess the land and will live in peace and prosperity. This echoes Jesus' words in the Beatitudes, Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. The lowly or meek will live humbly, trusting in God rather than seeking power or revenge. David highlights the peaceful and prosperous life that comes from relying on God. This prosperity isn't necessarily about material wealth. It's about a deep sense of well-being and the contentment that comes from being in a right relationship with God. When we humble ourselves and trust Him, we can experience a peace that surpasses understanding even in the face of challenges. This verse reminds us that humility and dependence on God are the keys to true success. The world often values power and self-reliance, but God honors those who place their trust in Him and live with gentleness and integrity. In verses 12 and 13, David describes the action of the wicked and God's response. The wicked plot against the godly. They snarl at them in defiance, but the Lord laughs, for He sees their day of judgment coming. The wicked are portrayed as actively opposing the godly, plotting harm, and displaying defiance. Their arrogance and hostility may seem intimidating, but David reminds us that their efforts are ultimately futile. God's response is striking. He laughs. It isn't a laugh of amusement, but one of His sovereignty and confidence. The schemes of the wicked do not threaten God because He knows their judgment is certain. This imagery offers profound comfort. No matter how powerful or cunning the wicked may seem, they are no match for God. He is in control, and His justice will prevail. When we face opposition or feel overwhelmed by evil, we can rest in assurance that God sees, knows, and will act. David continues in verses 14 and 15. The wicked draw their swords and string their bows to kill the poor and the oppressed, to slaughter those who do right. But their swords will stab their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. Here David paints a vivid picture of the wicked's aggression. They are armed and ready to harm the vulnerable and those who live righteously. This imagery reflects the reality that evil often targets those who appear defenseless or those who stand for the truth. However, David reveals the ultimate outcome of their actions. Their own weapons will turn against them. Their swords meant to harm others will stab only their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. This poetic justice emphasizes the self-destructive nature of evil. Those who pursue the wicked set themselves on the path that leads to their own ruin. These verses remind us that God's justice is inevitable and fitting. The wicked will face consequences of their action, and their attempt to harm others will ultimately backfire. For those who trust in God, this is a powerful assurance that evil will not have the final word. Psalm 37, verses 8 through 15, offers us practical wisdom and spiritual encouragement for navigating life's challenges. Here are a few key themes and the lessons that apply to our lives. First, release anger and trust in God. Anger can cloud our judgment and lead us away from God's peace. By letting go of our frustration and trusting in His justice, we can avoid harm and live with greater peace. Second, focus on God's eternal perspective. The wicked may appear to prosper, but their success is only temporary. God's justice will prevail, and those who trust in Him will receive an eternal inheritance. Third, embrace humility and dependence on God. Living with humility and trust in God leads to true peace and prosperity. When we rely on Him rather than our own strengths, we experience the blessings of His care and provision. Fourth, rest in God's sovereignty. God is not intimidated by the schemes of the wicked. He sees their plans and knows their end. When we face opposition, we can find comfort in His ultimate control and justice. And fifth, evil leads to self-destruction. The plans of the wicked often backfire, leading to their own ruin. This serves both as a warning and a reminder of God's justice is always at work. Psalm 37, verses 8 through 15, invites us to live with trust, humility, and patience in the face of life's challenges. David reminds us to release anger, focus on God's promises, and rest in His justice. As we navigate the world filled with both good and evil, we can find peace in knowing that God is sovereign and that His justice will prevail. Thank you for joining me today on our Wisdom Trek. As you reflect on these verses, I encourage you to bring your frustrations to God, trust in His timing, and walk in humility and peace that comes from knowing Him. Until the next time, may God's wisdom guide your steps, and may His love fill your hearts with peace and confidence. And if you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review. Then encourage your friends and family to join us and come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, and most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal. And as we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. See you next time for more daily wisdom.